Hello, I'm Danny Smith with the North Carolina Rural Water Association. We're at the North Carolina Rural Water Association training facility. Today we're going to be testing the pressure vacuum breaker. We'll be using Midwest 845 5-valve test kit, and the only hose that we're going to be using is our high pressure hose. First thing we want to do is we want to notify the customer that we're going to be shutting off the water. Then we want to inspect our area and make sure that there's no hazards. We want to check our test kit and make sure that all the valves are closed. And then we want to flush out our test cocks. So we're going to open the number 1, close it, open our number 2, close it, and then remove our air canopy. All right, so we're going to connect our high side hose to the number 2 test cock because we're testing the air inlet opening point, which should be 1 psi or greater. So connect our hose, open our number 2 test cock, bleed off any air, then we're going to shut off our number 2 shutoff valve, close our number 1 shutoff valve. All right, we want to hold our test kit level with the backflow preventer. We're going to open the high bleed side no more than a quarter of a turn. We just want to get the pressure dropping on our gauge just a little bit. Just a little screwdriver or something up there, just barely touching it, and watch for that air inlet opening point on the gauge. Okay, we're at about 1.6 for that. Should be 1 psi or greater, so we're good with our air inlet opening point. All right, so let's write that on our sheet here. We're just using this one box, so that's 1.6. All right, so we're going to close our number 2 test cock, remove our gauge. Now we've got to re-energize our backflow preventer. We want to make sure that our test kit's not hooked up at that point, because if we forgot to cut off a test cock or didn't get it closed all the way, when we re-energize that backflow preventer, we could be hammering our gauge. So we want to make sure everything's taken loose from it. I'm going to open up the number 1 shutoff valve real quickly. All right. So the second thing that we want to do is we want to check the check valve to make sure that it's holding back at least 1 psi in direction of flow. So we're going to connect our hose to the number 1 test cock. Going to open up that number 1 test cock. Open your high side bleed valve. Bleed off any air. Close it. All right, at this point, we want to get our line pressure reading, so it looks to be about 52. All right, we want to close our number 1 shutoff valve. Again, we want our gauge to be level with the backflow preventer. We're going to open up our number 2 test cock, start draining off that water in the body of the backflow preventer. Get it going, then open it up completely. Your air inlet's going to open. And wait till it stops. We want our check valve should be at least 1 psi or greater. And we're looking at about 2.8. So we're good on our check valve. So let's write that down. That also tells us both tests were correct. So that also tells us that the number 1 shutoff valve is held tight. All right, so now we want to remove all of our equipment. So close our number 1 test cock, close our number 2 test cock, remove our gauge. I'm going to open up our number 1 shutoff valve, re-energize the backflow preventer. Slowly open our number 2 shutoff valve, putting water to the customer. Replace our canopy. And we've successfully tested the pressure vacuum breaker.